A Werewolf Shifter Romance. Written by Amelia Hart. Chapter 1. Silver Chains. The hammer struck hot iron with a rhythm Freya Whitfield knew by heart. Sparks scattered across the darkened forge, brief stars that died against stone walls. The scent of burning coal mixed with her own sweat, creating a familiar perfume that clung to her skin and hair. 24 years of existence, and this forge was the only place she truly felt at peace. Outside, the autumn wind howled through Ironbrook's narrow streets. The sun had set hours ago, but Freya remained at her work. Better here than the cold room Alpha Osric provided at the edge of pack territory. Better the company of fire and metal than the pitying stares of wolves who saw her as broken. She plunged the horseshoe into water. Steam hissed, angry and violent. "Still here, Omega?" The blacksmith's apprentice, a human boy named Thomas, poked his head through the doorway. His expression held no malice, only curiosity. Humans didn't understand the shame that came with being a wolf who couldn't quite measure up. "Finishing Master Gerard's order," Freya replied, setting the cooled shoe aside. Her hands were steady, despite the exhaustion pulling at her bones. "You should get home before the moon rises fully." Thomas glanced at the darkening sky visible through the high windows. "You're not worried? It's a new moon. They say rogues get bold when there's no light to hunt by." She almost laughed. Rogues weren't the danger, not to her. Alpha Osric made certain everyone knew Freya Whitfield was pack property, even if she spent her days among humans. Even if her wolf was so weak she barely registered on another shifter's senses. "I'll be fine," she said. Thomas left with a wave. The forge fell silent except for the crackling fire. Freya worked for another hour, losing herself in the song only she could hear. The metal sang when she touched it, a vibration that traveled from her palms to her chest. It had been that way since childhood, a secret she kept buried deep, because different meant dangerous in Alpha Osric's territory. The last piece cooled. She banked the forge fire and gathered her threadbare cloak. The walk back to Packlands took half an hour through forests that bordered the neutral territory. Freya kept her head down and her steps quick. The unearthly howl stopped her cold. It came from deep within the Forbidden Woods, the stretch of wilderness that belonged to no pack. A place where shifters went to die or to hide. The sound tore through the night again, raw with agony, and something in Freya's chest twisted painfully. She should keep walking. Should return to her small room and pretend she heard nothing. Her feet turned toward the forest. The underbrush grabbed at her cloak and scratched her exposed hands. Freya pushed deeper, following a pull she didn't understand. The howls had stopped, but now she heard something worse. Labored breathing. The wet sound of blood hitting earth. Moonlight filtered through bare branches, illuminating a scene from nightmares. A massive black wolf lay collapsed against an ancient oak. Silver chains wrapped around his body, pinning him to the trunk. The metal gleamed with runes that hurt to look at directly, symbols that spoke of old magic and older hatred. Where the chains touched fur, the flesh burned. Smoke rose from wounds that should have healed instantly on any shifter. The wolf's eyes opened. Silver. Not amber or gold like most of their kind, but pure silver that caught the faint light and reflected it back. Those eyes fixed on Freya with an intelligence that made her breath catch. He was dying. She should run. Should call for Alpha Osric. Should do anything except move closer to a strange wolf bound by magic she didn't understand. Freya knelt beside him. "Easy," she whispered, though she didn't know if he could understand in this form. "I'm going to help." The wolf made a sound between a growl and a whimper. Warning or permission, she couldn't tell. Her hands hovered over the chains. Heat radiated from the silver, making her fingers tingle. But beneath that heat, she felt something else. A resonance. The same singing sensation she experienced with every piece of metal in her forge. The chains were calling to her. Freya closed her eyes and let instinct guide her. She pressed her palms against the silver, ignoring the burn. The song grew louder, clearer. She could feel the structure of the metal, the way it had been forged and twisted and imbued with power meant to hold and hurt. But metal answered to her will in ways she'd never understood. She thought of breaking, of freedom, of chains that served no purpose but cruelty. The silver cracked. The wolf's breathing changed, becoming steadier. Encouraged, Freya focused harder. The singing in her mind became almost deafening, a chorus demanding release. She gave it everything she had. The chains shattered. The wolf collapsed forward. Freya caught him instinctively, her arms wrapping around the massive, furred body. He was heavy, impossibly so, but she refused to let him fall. Then the shift began. Bones cracked and reformed. Fur receded into skin. The weight in her arms changed, becoming less animal and more man. Freya's eyes widened as the transformation completed. He was beautiful in a harsh, dangerous way. Dark hair fell across a face of sharp angles and harder edges. Even unconscious and wounded, he radiated power. Scars marked his chest, 3 parallel lines that spoke of old battles. His body was all muscle and raw strength, and he was completely naked. Heat flooded Freya's face. She started to pull away, but his hand shot out, catching her wrist. Those silver eyes opened again, now set in a human face that stole whatever breath she had left. The world tilted. Something slammed into her chest, foreign and overwhelming. It felt like lightning and inevitability, like coming home to a place she'd never been. The man's eyes widened, telling her he felt it too. Mate bond. The thought came unbidden. Impossible. Freya had never felt even a whisper of bond with anyone in her pack. Had convinced herself she was too weak, too broken to ever experience what other shifters described. But this was unmistakable. This was everything the stories promised, and more. Who? His voice was rough, damaged by whatever torture the silver had inflicted. Who are you? Freya, she managed. Freya Whitfield. He opened his mouth to respond, but the sound of running feet cut him off. Voices shouted in the distance, growing closer. The man's expression shifted from dazed to alert in a heartbeat. Ironwood guards, he growled, trying to push himself up. His body betrayed him, too weakened by silver poisoning. You need to run. Not without you. I'm not one of your pack. They'll kill you for helping me. Freya looked at this stranger, who somehow felt less strange than anyone she'd ever known. The mate bond pulsed between them, undeniable. Then we both run. She helped him stand, taking most of his considerable weight. He was easily a head taller than her, broad-shouldered and powerfully built even in his weakened state. Freya's wolf, usually so quiet she forgot it existed, suddenly surged forward with protective instinct. There's a cave, she said. Not far. Can you make it? The voices grew louder. Torchlight flickered through the trees. I can make it, he said. They stumbled into the darkness together. Behind them, angry shouts filled the night. But Freya knew these woods better than any Ironwood guard. She'd spent years walking them, seeking solitude away from pack judgment. The cave appeared between 2 massive boulders, its entrance barely wide enough for them to squeeze through. Inside, the space opened into a natural chamber. Freya had discovered it years ago, even stashed supplies here. Blankets, dried food, a flint for fire. She settled the man against the back wall and quickly struck a small fire. Light revealed the full extent of his injuries. Burns covered his torso and arms where the silver had touched. Some looked days old. How long were you chained there? She asked, reaching for the herbs she kept in a small pouch. 2 days. Maybe 3. He watched her with those unsettling silver eyes. You shouldn't have freed me. You were dying. I still might. Freya crushed Nightshade and Comfrey between her palms, creating a paste. Not if I can help it. She applied the mixture to his wounds, trying to ignore how her hands trembled at the contact. The mate bond sang with every touch, urging her closer. This was madness. She didn't even know his name. Aldwyn, he said, as if reading her thoughts. Aldwyn Frostborn. The name struck her. Frostborn. The ruling family of the Northern Territories. Which meant this man was not just any shifter. He was the Alpha King. He looked older than her by some years, seasoned in battle, weathered by burdens she had never carried. Late 20s, maybe 30. A gulf of time that should have made them strangers, yet the bond between them made such differences feel irrelevant. Chapter 2. Truths in Darkness. 3 days had passed since Freya dragged an Alpha King into her secret cave. 3 days of watching silver poisoning slowly leave his system, while she tried not to think about the mate bond humming between them. Aldwyn Frostborn was a difficult patient. You need to rest, Freya said for the 100th time, pushing him back down when he tried to stand. Again, The silver is still in your blood. You'll collapse if you keep pushing yourself. His silver eyes flashed with frustration. Even weakened, he radiated authority that made her wolf want to bare its throat in submission. But Freya had spent 24 years learning to ignore instincts that told her she was less than others. My kingdom is in the hands of a traitor, Aldwin growled. Resting isn't an option. Dying isn't either. She crushed more herbs between her palms, the familiar motion calming her nerves. Tell me what happened. How did you end up in those chains? He was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then he sighed, the sound heavy with old betrayal. Corwin Nightshade. My beta. I trusted him with my life. Aldwin's jaw clenched. He arranged a meeting with the Ironwood Pack to discuss border disputes. Said it would be just the two of us and their alpha. A show of good faith. But it was a trap. The Ironwood wolves were there, but so were a dozen others. They came at me from all sides. His hand moved to the scars on his chest. The 3 parallel lines Freya had noticed before. I fought. Killed half of them. But then Corwin struck from behind. Silver blade coated in wolfsbane. Freya's hands stilled. Your own beta tried to kill you. He did kill me. Or thought he had. Aldwin's voice turned cold. I heard him laughing as they wrapped those chains around me. Heard him tell the Ironwood Alpha that I'd be dead by morning, and he'd return to claim the throne as rightful heir. But you're not of his bloodline. No, but his mate is. The words were bitter. Seraphina. My first mate. The woman I was bound to for political alliance when I was barely 20. The confession hit Freya harder than it should. She'd known about political matings, of course. It was how powerful packs maintained their territories. But hearing Aldwin speak of another woman he'd been bound to made the mate bond in her chest ache. She betrayed you, Freya said quietly. She never wanted me. Made that clear from the start. Aldwin met her gaze. The bond was incomplete. We went through the ceremony, the marking, but without true consent, without real connection, it meant nothing. When Corwin offered her genuine partnership, she chose him. Freya applied the herbal paste to the worst of his burns. Her fingers brushed his skin, and the bond flared bright and insistent, so different from what he described with Seraphina. This wasn't political. This wasn't forced. This was fate recognizing its match. The chains, she said, needing to focus on something other than how right his skin felt under her hands. They weren't ordinary silver. No, they were forged by someone with rare talent, old magic woven into the metal itself. His eyes studied her face. The same talent you used to break them. Freya pulled back. I don't have any talent. I'm just an Omega who works in a forge. You're a songsmith. The word hung between them. Freya had never heard it before, but something in her soul recognized it. Like coming home to a place she'd never been. That's not possible, she whispered. Songsmiths are extinct. Everyone knows the stories. They were hunted down centuries ago because they could forge weapons that killed alphas permanently. No healing, no second chances. Just death. Not everyone was caught. Aldwin sat up slowly, ignoring her protests. Some went into hiding, bred with regular shifters, diluted their bloodlines until the ability became dormant. Waiting. For what? For someone strong enough to awaken it again. His hand caught hers, thumb tracing the calluses from years of forge work. You shattered chains designed to hold an Alpha King, Freya. Chains forged by a songsmith that Corwin paid a fortune to hire. Do you understand what that means? She understood too much and not enough. The way metal sang to her. The instinctive knowledge of how to shape and break it. The secret she'd kept her entire life because being different meant being dangerous. If Corwin hired a songsmith to make those chains, Freya said slowly, then he knows they exist. He knows their power. And if he discovers you... Aldwin didn't finish. He didn't need to. The cave suddenly felt smaller, more like a trap than a sanctuary. Why can't you just claim me? The question burst out before Freya could stop it. If we're true mates, if the bond is real, why not complete it and be done? Aldwin's expression softened. Because I won't be another person who takes your choice away. The mate bond is powerful, Freya. Overwhelming. It makes you want things, feel things that might not be real without the magic pushing you together. You think I don't want this? She gestured between them. That I'm only feeling this because of some cosmic force? I think you're 24 years old, living in a pack that treats you as worthless, and suddenly an Alpha King appears claiming you're his destined mate. That's a lot of pressure, a lot of expectation. He released her hand. I want you to choose me because you want to, not because fate demands it. The vulnerability in his voice cracked something in Freya's carefully constructed walls. Here was a man who could command armies, who ruled territories, offering her the one thing no one ever had: choice. I've never felt the mate bond before, she admitted. Everyone in my pack kept telling me I was broken, too weak, not enough wolf to recognize my destined mate even if I found them. She looked at their hands, his so much larger than hers. I started to believe them, started to think maybe I was meant to be alone. You're not alone anymore. The words were simple but felt like a vow. Before Freya could respond, footsteps echoed outside the cave. She tensed, reaching for the makeshift knife she'd fashioned from a broken chain fragment. Aldwin pushed himself in front of her despite his weakened state. Alpha King. A male voice called from the entrance. It's Gideon. I'm alone. Aldwin relaxed marginally. Come in, slowly. A man squeezed through the narrow opening. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with blonde hair tied back, and a scar cutting through his chin. His eyes widened when he saw Aldwin alive. Thank the gods, Gideon breathed. We thought you were dead. Corwin announced it 3 days ago, held a mourning ceremony and everything. How touching. Aldwin's voice dripped sarcasm. I'm sure his grief was profound. He's already moving to consolidate power, declared himself interim Alpha King until proper succession can be established. Now Gideon's gaze flicked to Freya, questions in his eyes. Who is she? Freya Whitfield. She saved my life. And you brought her here? Gideon's tone turned sharp. Alpha King, with respect, we don't know if she's working with Corwin. This could be a trap. The words stung, but Freya couldn't exactly blame him. She was a stranger who'd appeared at the perfect moment. It did seem suspicious. She's my mate, Aldwin said flatly. Gideon's eyes widened. But Seraphina was never truly mine. The bond was incomplete, political. This, Aldwin gestured between himself and Freya, is real. Gideon studied Freya with new intensity. Then, slowly, he bowed his head. My apologies, Lady Freya. If the Alpha King claims you as mate, you have my loyalty. Lady. The title sat wrong on her shoulders. She was no lady, just a forge worker who'd made one impulsive decision. What's happening in the capital? Aldwin asked. Gideon's expression darkened. Corwin's moving fast. Your sister, Lady Vivian, is in danger. He's pushing for a marriage alliance. Says it will stabilize the kingdom and honor your memory. Aldwin's growl rattled the cave walls. He'll force her. She's resisting, but she has no legal grounds to refuse. As interim Alpha King, Corwin has the authority to arrange marriages for the royal family. I need to get back. Aldwin tried to stand. His legs wobbled. Freya caught him. You can barely walk. My sister needs me. Your sister needs you alive, Freya countered. If you go back now, Corwin will kill you before you reach the castle gates. The silver is still weakening you. You need at least another day, maybe 2. We don't have 2 days. Gideon's voice was grim. The wedding is scheduled for 3 days from now. Some kind of blood bond ritual that will make Corwin nearly immortal if completed with royal blood. Silence fell heavy in the cave. Freya's mind raced through possibilities, discarding them as quickly as they formed. Then an idea crystallized. I can help, she said quietly. Both men looked at her. I have a workshop. Hidden in the forest. I can forge weapons. Special ones. She met Aldwin's knowing gaze. The kind that might give you an advantage against a traitor who thinks he's already won. Chapter 3. Forged in Fire. Freya's workshop was nothing like the forge in Ironbrook. This was her sanctuary, built piece by piece over years of stolen moments, hidden deep in a grove where 3 ancient oaks grew together, their branches forming a natural roof. She'd fashioned walls from river stones and mortar. The chimney was disguised to look like a dead tree trunk from a distance. Aldwin stood in the doorway, his silver eyes taking in every detail. The weapons hanging on the walls, the carefully organized tools, the forge itself, smaller than a proper smithy but perfectly maintained. You built all this? His voice held genuine awe. Over 5 years. Freya moved to the forge, already mentally cataloging what she'd need. Alpha Osric thought I was gathering herbs. I was actually stealing supplies and learning to work metal without anyone questioning why an Omega cared about weaponry. Gideon entered behind Aldwin, ducking under the low doorway. This is impressive work. The craftsmanship alone would take most apprentices a decade to master. Freya didn't respond. She was already pulling ingots from their hiding places. Silver, iron, steel. Her hands moved with certainty born of countless hours spent here. "What do you need from us?" Aldwin asked. "Time. Silence. And stay out of my way." She started building the fire. "I work better alone." But Aldwin didn't leave. He settled onto a wooden bench against the wall, watching her with those intense eyes that made her skin prickle with awareness. The mate bond hummed between them, stronger now than even hours ago. Freya tried to ignore it, tried to focus on the work. The fire roared to life. She selected the first piece of silver, examining it for impurities. This batch was good, pure. It would sing properly. She thrust the metal into the flames. "Tell me about songsmiths," Aldwin said quietly. "What you know. What you've felt." Freya kept her attention on the heating silver. "I don't know anything. Just that metal talks to me. Always has. When I touch it, I can feel its structure, its weaknesses, where it wants to break and where it wants to hold strong. That's more than most smiths ever achieve. It's also why I hide." She pulled the glowing silver from the fire and positioned it on the anvil. Being different gets you killed in packs. Or used. I saw what happened to wolves with rare abilities. They became weapons for ambitious alphas. The hammer fell. Once. Twice. 3 times. The ringing filled the workshop. "Is that why you never told anyone?" Aldwin's voice cut through the metallic song. "Fear of being used? Fear of being like my mother." The words came out before Freya could stop them. She paused, hammer raised. "She died when I was 9. Alpha Osric said it was an accident. A fall. But I remember the smell of fear in our home the days before. Remember her burning papers. Hiding things. What kind of things? I don't know. I was too young." Freya returned the silver to the flames. "But after she died, Osric moved us to the edge of Packlands. Kept me away from other wolves. Told everyone I was weak. Defective. That my wolf would never fully manifest. He was protecting you." The words made her laugh bitterly. "Protecting me? He made my life miserable. Because if anyone suspected what you really were, they'd have come for you." Aldwin stood, moving closer to the forge. The firelight played across his features, making his scars stand out stark against his skin. Songsmiths were hunted, Freya. Systematically exterminated because their weapons could kill alphas permanently. No healing. No resurrection. Just death. Why? She pulled the silver out again, began shaping it with practiced strikes. Why would that be worth genocide? Because power corrupts. And alphas with absolute power become tyrants. His hand touched her shoulder, gentle despite the strength she knew he possessed. Songsmiths were the only check on that corruption, the only thing that made alphas fear consequences. The hammer slipped. Freya caught it before it fell, but her hands trembled. "So they killed them all." "Not all. Some hid, bred with regular shifters. Your mother was probably one of the last full-blooded songsmiths." Aldwin's fingers traced down her arm. "Which makes you something rarer still. A second-generation songsmith with awakened abilities. How do you know so much about this?" His expression darkened. "Because my father ordered the final purge. 30 years ago, when I was barely born. He found the last known songsmith settlement and had every man, woman, and child executed. The workshop fell silent, except for the crackling fire." Freya set down her hammer carefully. Very carefully. "Your father. Killed your people." "Yes." Aldwin didn't look away from her accusing stare. "I didn't know until I was 16. By then, he was dying of the same paranoia that drove him to such extremes. He told me on his deathbed, said it was necessary, that songsmiths were too dangerous to exist. And what do you think? I think he was a coward who couldn't imagine sharing power." Aldwin's jaw clenched. "I think he committed genocide because he was afraid. And I think if he'd survived to meet you, he'd have tried to kill you too. Freya should feel rage, should push him away." The mate bond protested the very thought, but she forced herself to consider it rationally. Why didn't you tell me before? Because I wanted you to see me first, not the son of a monster. His hand cupped her cheek. But you deserve truth, even ugly truth. She studied his face. The sharp lines, the old scars, the eyes that had seen too much and still looked at her with something approaching reverence. Your father's dead? 15 years ago. Then I can't hate him, only his memory. She turned back to the forge. And I can't hate you for his choices. That would make me the same kind of monster. Relief flooded through the mate bond. Aldwin pulled her against his chest, his arms wrapping around her waist. Freya leaned into the embrace despite the heat from the forge. You're burned, he murmured against her hair. His fingers found the blisters on her palms. Let me help. I'm used to it. That doesn't mean you should suffer. He guided her to the bench, pushed her down gently. His hands were surprisingly careful as he examined the burns. Then he lowered his head and traced his tongue across the worst of them. Freya gasped. The burns didn't heal completely, but the pain faded. Alpha saliva had mild healing properties, she knew, but this felt different, more intimate. Better? His silver eyes had darkened to pewter. Yes, they were too close. The workshop was too small. The mate bond was too insistent. Aldwin leaned in slowly, giving her time to pull away. Freya didn't. Their lips met softly, tentatively. Nothing like the desperate kisses from stories she'd heard. This was careful. A question waiting for an answer. She answered by pulling him closer. The kiss deepened. Aldwin's hand threaded through her hair, tilting her head for better access. Freya's fingers clutched his shirt, feeling the solid muscle beneath. Heat that had nothing to do with the forge pooled low in her belly. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard. I'm not enough, Freya whispered. I'm just an Omega. You're an Alpha King. This doesn't make sense. The bond doesn't care about titles. His forehead pressed against hers, and neither do I. You're brave, talented, strong in ways that have nothing to do with physical power. That's what I see. That's what I want. But everyone will say, let them talk. He kissed her again, harder this time. I've spent my whole life making choices for political gain. This is mine. You are mine. If you'll have me. The mate bond sang agreement. But Freya needed to hear herself say it. I want this. Want you. The admission felt like jumping off a cliff. Even though it terrifies me. Good. Aldwin's smile was fierce. Fear means you're paying attention. He kissed down her neck, finding the spot where shoulder met throat. The place shifters marked their mates. Freya's breath caught. This will hurt, he warned. I know. For a heartbeat she hesitated, remembering his words, that he wanted her to choose freely. And she did. Not because fate demanded it, but because in that moment she knew her own will. She leaned into him, offering her throat not in surrender, but in certainty. His teeth sank into her flesh, sharp, deep, claiming. Freya's back arched with pain that rapidly transformed into something else entirely. The mate bond exploded between them, going from a gentle hum to a roaring inferno. She could feel him now. His emotions, his desire, his absolute certainty that she was his. When he pulled back, blood stained his lips. The mark throbbed on her neck, but already she could feel it beginning to heal into a permanent scar. Proof of their connection. Yours, she breathed. Mine, he agreed. They made love on the workshop floor, surrounded by tools and unfinished weapons. It was imperfect and overwhelming, and absolutely right. Afterward, wrapped in his arms with her cheek pressed against his chest, Freya felt the mate bond settle into something unshakable. Morning came too soon. Gideon returned with grim news and 5 loyal warriors ready to fight. Freya pushed aside her exhaustion and returned to the forge. Now she wasn't working alone. Aldwin helped however he could, fetching materials and keeping the fire fed. They worked in companionable silence, the mate bond making words unnecessary. By evening, Freya had forged 5 sets of matched daggers. Silver that wouldn't burn allies but would cut enemies. Each blade hummed with power she didn't quite understand, but trusted implicitly. 3 days, Gideon reminded them. Then Corwin binds himself to your sister through the blood bond ritual. Aldwin's expression hardened. Then we have 3 days to end this. Gather who you can trust. Meet us at the northern border tomorrow at dawn." As the warriors left to make preparations, Freya cleaned her tools. Tomorrow they'd march toward a battle she barely understood. Tonight, she had this moment. "No regrets?" Aldwin asked quietly. Freya touched the mark on her neck. "Only that we didn't have more time. We'll make time. After." He pulled her close. "I promise you that." Chapter 4. Masks and Daggers. The festival torches cast dancing shadows across Frostborn Castle's stone walls. Music and laughter spilled from the great hall where Corwin celebrated his supposed ascension. Freya pulled the servant's cloak tighter, keeping her head down as she moved through the crowded corridors. The dagger strapped to her thighs felt heavier with each step. She'd never killed anyone before. Wasn't sure she could. But for Vivian, for Aldwin, she'd try. "Wine for the high table!" A steward barked at passing servants. Freya joined the line, grabbing a pitcher. The perfect excuse to get close. The great hall was magnificent in a brutal sort of way. Black banners hung from vaulted ceilings. The high table sat elevated on a dais where Corwin held court. He looked every inch an alpha king in dark velvet and silver chains. Handsome, confident, utterly false. Freya's wolf stirred with recognition. She'd seen Corwin before, years ago, when he visited Stonehaven territory. He'd smiled at her then, patted her head, and called her Little Omega. She'd thought him kind. What a fool she'd been. She poured wine for lesser nobles, working her way toward the dais. Her eyes scanned for Aldwin and his men. There, near the main doors, guards in unfamiliar colors. But she recognized Gideon's stance, the way Aldwin held himself even when trying to blend in. Their eyes met across the crowded hall. The mate bond flared, warm and reassuring. He gave the smallest nod. "Soon." "You there." A hand gripped Freya's arm. "Lord Corwin requires more wine." She climbed the dais steps, heart hammering. Up close, Corwin was even more imposing. His amber eyes swept over her dismissively before returning to his conversation with the Ironwood Alpha. Freya poured carefully, keeping her hand steady. As she turned to leave, a familiar scent hit her. Old blood and bitter herbs. Osric, her former alpha, stood at the dais edge, deep in conversation with one of Corwin's men. He hadn't seen her yet. Freya ducked her head and moved quickly toward the servants' exit. A narrow staircase led to the upper floors where the royal chambers were kept. Freya discarded the wine pitcher and pulled one dagger free. The metal sang to her touch, eager. The corridors grew quieter as she climbed. Fewer guards here. They were all at the festival. She found the royal wing by following the scent of expensive perfume and fear. Lady Vivian's chamber was guarded by 2 men. Freya's mind raced. She couldn't fight 2 trained warriors. But maybe she didn't need to. She stepped into view, letting her cloak fall open enough to show her simple dress. Young, harmless, female. "Begging your pardons," she said, voice shaking genuinely. "Lord Corwin sent me to check on the lady. Make sure she's ready for tomorrow's ceremony." The guards exchanged glances. "We weren't told about any servant. He just decided. Said she might need a woman's company tonight." Freya clutched her hands together. "Please, I don't want to go back and tell him I failed." Fear of disappointing their new Alpha King worked better than any weapon. They let her pass. The chamber was luxurious, silk hangings, a massive bed, and in the center a woman with short black hair and silver eyes sat in a chair, wrists bound with silver chains. Lady Vivian looked up as Freya entered. Her nostrils flared, catching scent. Recognition dawned immediately. "You smell like my brother," Vivian said quietly. "Like Aldwin." Freya closed the door and moved quickly to examine the chains. "He's alive. He's here. We're getting you out. How did you—" Vivian's eyes widened as she took in the mate mark on Freya's neck. "You're his mate. His true mate. We don't have time for explanations." Freya's hands hovered over the silver chains. They were similar to the ones that had bound Aldwin, but simpler. Newer. "This blood bond ritual tomorrow. Tell me about it. It requires blood from a royal line given voluntarily. If Corwin binds himself to me through the ritual, he'll become nearly immortal. Unkillable by conventional means." Vivian leaned closer. "He's been trying to convince me it's for the good of the kingdom." that Aldwin would have wanted me to accept. Do you believe him? I think my brother would rather see me dead than bound to a traitor. Vivian's voice hardened. Can you break these chains? Freya focused on the silver, feeling its structure. These were cruder than the ones that had held Aldwin. No ancient magic woven through, just simple restraints. She thought of freedom, of breaking. The chains cracked. How did you... Vivian started. The door burst open. Osric filled the doorway, his face contorted with recognition and rage. You, he snarled. I knew I smelled something familiar. Freya Whitfield. What are you doing here? Freya pushed Vivian behind her, dagger raised. Leaving, with the lady. You're not going anywhere. Osric's eyes fell on the broken chains, and something like fear flashed across his face. You awakened it. Your mother's curse. It's not a curse. It killed her. It'll kill you too. He took a step forward. I tried to protect you, girl. Kept you hidden. Kept you weak. All so they wouldn't find you and do to you what they did to her. Liar. But doubt crept in. You made my life miserable. I made you invisible. There's a difference. Osric's hand moved to his sword. But now you've revealed yourself. Help the Alpha King. They'll hunt you down like they hunted all the others. Then I'll fight. She threw the dagger. Her first throw. Inexperienced. It should have gone wide. Instead, the blade adjusted mid-flight, responding to her will. It buried itself in Osric's shoulder. He roared, stumbling back. Osric staggered, blood soaking his side, but sheer stubborn will kept him moving. He had survived too many battles, endured too many scars, to fall quickly now. Rage alone seemed to hold him upright as he fought his way through the corridors. Freya felt the metal singing in her mind. She could control it, direct it. The dagger ripped free of Osric's flesh and flew back to her hand. What are you? Osric gasped. Something you should have feared more than your Alpha King. She threw again. This time Osric was ready. He dodged, crashing through the door into the corridor. His shout echoed through the castle. Traitors in the royal wing! The Alpha King lives! Vivian grabbed Freya's arm. We need to run! They fled down the corridor as guards thundered up the stairs. Freya's second dagger found her hand. She sent both blades spinning ahead, not to kill, but to disarm. Metal clashed against metal as swords fell from surprised grips. They burst into the great hall, just as chaos erupted below. Aldwin had revealed himself, his silver eyes blazing with alpha command. Half the guards immediately dropped to their knees. The others drew weapons. Vivian! Aldwin's roar shook the rafters, but Corwin was faster. He'd already moved, wrapping an arm around another woman's waist. Seraphina. She was beautiful in a cold, calculated way. Her smile was all triumph as she pressed a dagger to her own throat. One step closer, and your precious mate dies. Corwin called. Then his eyes found Freya on the upper gallery. Or should I say, one of your mates dies. How interesting, brother. You've collected another. Aldwin's face went carefully blank. Let my sister go, Corwin. I don't think so. In fact, I think Lady Vivian and I will be leaving, along with our dear Seraphina. Corwin's smile was poisonous. Unless you'd like to watch me kill her. Osric limped into the hall, blood staining his shirt. He pointed directly at Freya. The Omega. She's a songsmith. I saw her control metal with her mind. Every eye turned to Freya. She felt the weight of their stares. Disbelief. Fear. Hunger. Corwin's expression transformed from confident to calculating. A songsmith. Now that changes things. Tell me, little Omega. Did you forge the weapons your precious Alpha King carries? Freya said nothing. I'll take that as a yes. Corwin's grip on Seraphina shifted. New terms, Aldwin. You give me the songsmith, and I'll let both your sister and former mate live. Refuse, and I kill them both right now. Don't! Vivian called from beside Freya. He's lying. He'll kill us regardless. Probably, Corwin agreed cheerfully. But at least this way you have a chance. Tick-tock, Alpha King. What's it worth to you? A kingdom? Your sister? Or one little Omega who can forge pretty weapons? The mate bond screamed at Freya. Aldwin's emotions crashed through her. Rage, helplessness, desperation. She made her decision. Freya stepped toward the gallery railing. I'll go with you. Let them go. No. Aldwin started forward. Corwin's blade moved to Seraphina's throat. Stay where you are. The songsmith comes to me willingly, or I paint this floor with royal blood. Freya descended the stairs slowly. Every instinct screamed at her to run, but Vivian's life hung in the balance. And maybe, just maybe, she could turn this around from the inside. She was 5 steps from Corwin when Aldwin moved. Not toward Corwin, but toward the guards who'd remained loyal. His command voice rang out. Take them! The hall exploded into violence. Shifters transformed mid-leap. Swords clashed. Blood splattered across pristine stones. Corwin cursed and ran, dragging Seraphina. Osric grabbed for Vivian, but she fought back with surprising ferocity. Freya's daggers flew from her hands, creating chaos as they spun through the crowd. She reached Vivian just as Gideon appeared, cutting down Osric's guards. Together they formed a protective circle. Where's Aldwin? Freya gasped. Chasing Corwin. Gideon pointed toward the eastern corridor. He's not thinking clearly. The mate bond makes him reckless when you're threatened. Freya ran. She found Aldwin cornering Corwin near the stables, but Corwin wasn't alone anymore. A dozen ironwood wolves surrounded them, fangs bared. This isn't over, Corwin called as he mounted a horse. I'll be back for what's mine, brother. The throne, the kingdom, and your precious songsmith. He rode into the night, Osric and Seraphina fleeing with him, and clutched in Osric's arms, unconscious, was Vivian. Aldwin shifted, his massive black wolf form giving chase, but arrows rained down from ironwood archers, forcing him back. When he shifted to human form again, rage and defeat warred in his expression. They'd won the castle, but they'd lost his sister. Chapter 5. The Price of Blood. 2 days had passed since Aldwin reclaimed his castle. 2 days of treating wounded warriors and securing loyalties. 2 days watching his mate's shoulder slowly heal from a silver blade that had caught her during the escape. Freya sat in what was now their shared chamber, fingers tracing the bandage. The wound ached, but not as badly as the hollow feeling in her chest. Vivian was gone, taken by Corwin and Osric into whatever hole they'd crawled into. Aldwin paced before the window, his frustration a living thing transmitted through their bond. Gideon stood near the door, arms crossed, watching his alpha spiral. We have scouts searching every known hideout, Gideon said for the 3rd time that hour. They'll find them. Will they find them before Corwin completes the blood bond ritual? Before he becomes unkillable? Aldwin's fist slammed against the stone wall. My sister is in the hands of a madman. A raven landed on the windowsill. The message tied to its leg bore Corwin's seal. Aldwin read it, his expression turning to stone. Without a word, he handed it to Freya. The letter was simple, cruel. Trade the songsmith for your sister. Dawn, 3 days from now, at the old ruins near Ironwood Territory. Come alone, or I kill them both. Refuse, and I'll make Vivian's death last days. Freya's hands shook. We have to go. No. Aldwin's voice was flat. Absolute. It's a trap. He wants you. Your ability to forge weapons. Once he has that, he'll kill Vivian anyway and become unstoppable. So we do nothing? Freya stood, ignoring the pull in her shoulder. Just let your sister die? We find another way. There is no other way. Her voice rose. You heard what Osric said. Corwin hired a songsmith to make those chains that held you. That songsmith is probably dead now. I'm the only one who can forge what he needs. He won't kill me. Not immediately. And that's supposed to comfort me? Aldwin crossed to her, gripping her shoulders gently. Freya, if he takes you, I may never get you back. The mate bond would drive me mad feeling you suffer, feeling you die. Through the bond, she felt his terror. It matched her own. But beneath it ran something stronger. Purpose. Then we make sure he doesn't take me permanently. She met his silver gaze. I have a plan. Gideon stepped forward. My lady, with respect, any plan that involves you in Corwin's hands is a bad plan. Not if I sabotage whatever he wants me to forge. Freya pulled away from Aldwin, moving to the desk. She found parchment and began sketching. Songsmiths can build flaws into weapons. Invisible weaknesses that activate at the right moment. I'll forge whatever Corwin demands, but it will be useless. Maybe even dangerous to him. He'll test it, Aldwin said. He's not stupid. Then I'll make it pass simple tests. But fail when it matters most. Her hand moved across the parchment, years of forge work guiding her design. Trust me. I know metal. I know how to make it betray its wielder. Aldwin studied the sketches. Slowly, reluctantly, he nodded. If we do this, you're not going alone. The message said alone. I said you're not going alone. His voice held alpha command that made Freya's wolf submit automatically. We follow at a distance, close enough to intervene. It wasn't perfect, but it was something. That night, Freya couldn't sleep. She lay beside Aldwin, listening to his breathing, feeling the mate bond pulse between them. Tomorrow she'd walk into a trap, maybe die, probably be tortured. Worth it, if Vivian lived. She slipped from bed before dawn, leaving only a letter on the pillow. Gideon would try to stop her. Aldwin would refuse to let her go alone, but this was her choice, her sacrifice. The stables were quiet. Freya saddled a horse quickly, checking the hidden daggers strapped to her thighs. As she led the mare outside, a figure emerged from shadows. Tamsin, you're going after Lady Vivian, her friend said. Not a question. You should be in the servants' quarters. And you should be in bed with your mate. But here we are. Tamsin grabbed a saddle. I'm coming with you. Tamsin, this is dangerous. They'll torture me, maybe kill me. Then you'll need someone watching your back. Tamsin's jaw set stubbornly. Besides, I can do something you can't. What? Tamsin pulled a long strip of bright red fabric from her satchel. Leave a trail. You'll be focused on Corwin. I'll mark our path so your alpha can find us. Freya wanted to argue, but having Tamsin along meant Aldwin would find them faster. And maybe, just maybe, her friend's presence would keep Corwin from doing his worst immediately. They rode into the pre-dawn darkness. Behind them, Gideon would eventually find Freya's letter and wake Aldwin. They'd follow, but by then, she'd be miles ahead. The ruins appeared as the sun broke the horizon. Ancient stones covered in moss and creeping vines. Once a temple. Now a den for whatever evil Corwin had become. Freya dismounted, Tamsin beside her. As promised, her friend tore strips from her underskirt, tying them to branches. Bright red against autumn brown. When they take me inside, Freya whispered, keep marking the path. Stay hidden. And if I don't come out, you'll come out. Tamsin squeezed her hand. You're the strongest person I know, Freya Whitfield. Don't you dare die on me. Corwin emerged from the ruins, Osric flanking him. Both wore triumphant smiles. The songsmith arrives. How punctual. Corwin's eyes found Tamsin. And she brought a pet. How sweet. Bring them both. Guards materialized. Too many to fight. Freya's daggers were stripped away before she could react. She and Tamsin were dragged into the ruins' depths. The interior was worse than expected. Cages lined one wall. In the largest, Vivian sat chained. Her face was bruised, dress torn, but her silver eyes burned with defiance. Beside her, in a smaller cage, huddled Seraphina. Corwin's supposed mate looked terrified. Vivian! Freya lunged forward. Chains caught her, cold iron wrapping around her wrists. Not silver, but spelled with something dark. Magic that made her skin crawl. Freya, no, Vivian called. You shouldn't have come. Of course she came. Corwin circled Freya. Love makes us do foolish things. Isn't that right, Songsmith? You love the Alpha King. Would do anything to save his sister. Let them go. You have what you want. Do I? Corwin's hand caught her chin, forcing her to meet his amber eyes. What I want is weapons that can kill alphas, chains that can hold them, and most importantly, I want the Frostborn line destroyed completely. Osric stepped forward, and Freya's blood turned to ice. Her former alpha looked older than she remembered. Haunted. Tell her, Corwin commanded. Tell her what you told me about her precious mate's family. Osric's eyes couldn't meet hers. Your mother, Ilara Whitfield. She was the last known songsmith, the last one we could find. I know that already. Do you know who ordered her death? Osric's voice cracked. Do you know which Alpha King demanded every songsmith be hunted and killed? No, Please no. Aldwyn's father. The words fell like stones. King Theron Frostborn. He sent me personally. Gave me orders to execute any songsmith I found in my territory. Your mother had hidden well, but she made a mistake. Forged something too perfect. I recognized the work. Freya's legs gave out. Only the chains held her upright. You killed my mother. On his father's orders. Orders Aldwyn didn't know about. Osric's hands clenched. I tried to protect you after. Kept you hidden. Kept you weak so no one would suspect. But now you've awakened your abilities and everyone knows. Through the mate bond, Freya felt Aldwyn. He was coming. Racing toward them with Gideon and whatever forces they'd gathered. She felt his determination. His love, but also his father's shadow. The blood debt between their families. Touching story. Corwin clapped slowly. But we have work to do. Songsmith, you're going to forge me a weapon. Something that can kill Aldwyn Frostborn permanently. Refuse, and I'll make your friend suffer. He gestured. Guards dragged Tamsin forward, forcing her to her knees. Choose. Forge the weapon, or watch her die slowly. In the cage, Vivian screamed protests. Seraphina watched silently, her expression unreadable. Freya looked at Tamsin, her friend. The only person besides Aldwyn who'd ever seen her as worth something. Then she looked at the anvil and forge already prepared in the ruin's center. Fine, she said. I'll forge your weapon, but I need my hands free. Corwin smiled. Remove her chains, but keep guards on her. And on the human girl. If she tries anything, kill them both. As the chains fell away, Freya's mind raced. She'd forge Corwin's weapon, make it perfect, beautiful, deadly, and absolutely, completely sabotaged. Chapter 6. Silver Awakening. The weapon took 4 hours to forge. Freya worked slowly, meticulously, while Corwin watched from across the ruins. Every strike of the hammer sent sparks flying. Every fold of the metal was calculated. Beautiful. Perfect. Deadly. And completely, invisibly flawed. She'd woven structural weaknesses into the blade's very core. Places where the metal would shear under pressure. Points where it would shatter instead of hold. To anyone watching, it was a masterwork. To someone who understood metal's song, it was a time bomb. Finished, Freya announced, holding up the sword. Firelight danced along its edge. Corwin approached, his amber eyes hungry. He took the weapon, testing its weight and balance. Exquisite. Everything I hoped for. Test it, Freya said. Make sure it meets your standards. He swung it experimentally. The blade hummed through air. Corwin smiled and drove it into a wooden beam. Clean cut. Perfect penetration. He pulled it free without resistance. And you're certain this can kill an Alpha King? The blade is forged with silver alloy. Enchanted to prevent regeneration. All true. What she didn't mention was that it would only hold for 3 strikes maximum before the flaws activated. 1 clean thrust through the heart, and even Aldwyn Frostborn won't rise again. Corwin's smile widened. Good. Very good. He gestured to his guards. Put the songsmith in a cage. And her friend. I want them alive for now. They may prove useful. As guards dragged Freya toward an empty cage, she felt it. The mate bond suddenly flared with alarm. Aldwyn was close. Very close. The ruin's entrance exploded inward. Aldwyn burst through in full wolf form, massive and black as midnight. His silver eyes found Freya immediately. Behind him came Gideon and 20 loyal warriors. Attack! Corwin roared. Chaos erupted. Shifters transformed mid-leap. Weapons clashed. Blood splattered ancient stones. Freya's cage had simple iron bars. She focused on the lock, feeling its structure. The metal sang to her touch. With a thought, the mechanism released. She pushed the door open and ran for Vivian's cage. Stay back, Vivian warned as Freya approached her silver chains. Trust me. Freya's hands hovered over the silver. It burned, but she pushed past the pain. The chain's song was different from iron. Higher pitched, more resistant, but still metal. Still subject to her will. The silver cracked. Freya pulled Vivian free, then turned to Tamsin's cage. Her friend huddled in the corner. terrified but alive. "Get them out!" Gideon appeared beside her, sword bloody. "I'll cover you." But Freya's attention had caught on the battle's center. Aldwyn in human form now, circling Osric. Both had shifted. Both were armed. The air between them crackled with old hatred. "Your father's orders," Osric screamed, loud enough for everyone to hear. "I killed her mother on King Theron's direct command. Every songsmith in the Northern Territories, every man, woman, and child who showed the talent. All dead on Frostborn orders." Aldwyn's face went white. What? She had heard these words before, whispered like poison in the shadows of her own doubts. Yet hearing them again, screamed in open battle, struck with the weight of final proof. There was no denying it now, no possibility that Aldwyn's ignorance could soften the truth. "You didn't know?" Osric laughed bitterly. "Of course not. Perfect little prince. While your father systematically committed genocide, you played at being the noble heir." The words hit Aldwyn physically. Freya felt it through the bond. Shock, horror, guilt that threatened to swallow him whole. She started toward him, but Corwin appeared in her path, touching reunion. He hefted the sword she'd forged. "But I have business to conclude." He moved fast. Alpha fast. The blade drove toward Aldwyn's back. Time slowed. Freya screamed a warning. Aldwyn turned, too late. For an instant her gaze flicked between Corwin and Aldwyn, and something inside her broke. She had chosen ambition once, chosen a man who promised her power, but gave her only chains. Perhaps this was her last chance to choose differently. The sword struck, but not Aldwyn. Seraphina had thrown herself between them, her eyes wide with shock. "Corwin," she gasped. "I thought you loved." "Love?" Corwin yanked the blade free. Seraphina crumpled. "You were a means to an end, nothing more." He raised the sword again, aiming for Aldwyn, who'd caught the dying woman. This time there was no one to block the strike. The blade shattered. Corwin stared at the broken weapon in disbelief. Fragments of metal scattered across the stones. "No," he breathed. "That's impossible. You forged it. You made it perfect. I made it flawed." Freya stepped forward. "Every weakness precisely calculated. Did you really think I'd forge the weapon to kill my mate?" Rage contorted Corwin's features. He dropped the useless hilt and charged, not toward Aldwyn, toward Freya. Aldwyn roared and launched himself between them. Corwin's claws raked across his chest. Deep, vicious, silver-tipped and poisoned. Aldwyn fell. The mate bond went silent. Freya felt something inside her break. Not the bond. Something deeper. Something that had been sleeping her entire life, waiting for this exact moment of desperate need. Power exploded from her core. Her skin erupted with light. Ancient runas blazed across her arms, her shoulders, her face. Glowing silver script that hurt to look at directly. Her eyes burned, shifting from green to pure molten gold. The Songsmith bloodline fully awakened. Every piece of metal in the ruins answered her call. Swords flew from warriors' hands. Daggers spun through the air. Chains ripped free from walls. All of it orbiting Freya in a deadly dance. "What?" Corwin stumbled back. "You wanted a songsmith." Freya's voice echoed with power. "Here I am." The metal obeyed her thoughts. Fragments from the shattered sword reformed, weaving together into liquid silver that flowed through the air. She directed it toward Corwin, Osric, and the Ironwood wolves who'd aided them. The silver formed a cage. Perfect, seamless, impenetrable. "No!" Corwin threw himself against the bars. They held, but Freya had already turned away. Aldwyn lay motionless, blood pooling beneath him. The mate bond was there, but faint, fading. She fell to her knees beside him. "No, no, no, don't you dare leave me." "Freya." His voice was barely a whisper. "I didn't know. About your mother. About what he did. I swear. I know." She pressed her hands to his wounds. The runas on her skin glowed brighter. "Save your strength. The poison." "Shut up." She focused on the metal in his blood, the silver that was killing him. She could feel it, sense its structure, and if she could sense it, she could command it. The silver pulled free from his wounds. Freya directed it out, watching it pool in her palms as liquid metal. Aldwyn gasped as the poison left his system. but the wounds were still critical. Too deep. Too much blood loss. Freya grabbed a discarded dagger and cut her own palm. Her blood, mixed with Songsmith power, would heal him. Had to heal him. She pressed her bleeding hand to his chest. "Live," she commanded. Not a request. An order backed by ancient magic. The runas flared. Power flowed from her into him. She felt his heart stutter, then strengthen. Felt torn flesh knit back together. Felt the mate bond surge from dying ember to roaring flame. Aldwin's eyes opened. Silver meeting gold. "You saved me," he breathed. "You saved me first." She helped him sit up. Around them, the battle had stopped. Every wolf stared at the glowing songsmith who'd just performed impossible magic. Aldwin's hand cupped her face. "My father's crimes are not yours." Freya's voice was firm. "I won't judge the son for the father's sins. That would make me as monstrous as those who hunted my people. But your mother died 15 years ago. You were 14. She leaned into his touch. You were a child. You didn't order her death. You didn't know. And now you're trying to build something different. Something better." Relief flooded the mate bond so intensely it made her dizzy. "You forgive me?" he asked. "There's nothing to forgive." "But Aldwin?" She met his eyes steadily. "I need you to claim me. Properly. Publicly. I don't want anyone questioning whether I belong to you or you to me." He smiled. Despite the blood, despite the battle, despite everything, he smiled. "Here? Now?" "Here. Now." In front of everyone. Aldwin stood, pulling her with him. His voice rang out across the ruins, carrying alpha command that made every shifter present stand at attention. "This woman is my mate. My true mate. She is Freya Frostborn, Luna Queen of the Northern Territories. Any who challenge her right, challenge me." He pulled her close and kissed her. Not gentle, claiming, possessive, a public declaration that she was his, and he was hers. When they broke apart, Gideon was the first to kneel. "My queen." One by one, the others followed. Even wounded warriors dropped to their knees. Only those trapped in Freya's metal cage remained standing. Vivian approached, her silver eyes bright with tears. "Welcome to the family, sister." The word sister made Freya's throat tight. Family. She had a family again. But as she looked at the imprisoned traitors, at the destruction around them, she knew this wasn't over. This was just the beginning. The days that followed blurred into weeks. Healing, rebuilding, burying the dead. Time slipped like sand through her fingers, each sunrise carrying them farther from the chaos of the ruins and closer to something resembling peace. Chapter 7. Crown of Silver. The formal ceremony took place 3 weeks after the battle at the ruins. Time enough for wounds to heal and for word to spread across the Northern Territories. Every alpha, every beta, every pack with any claim to power gathered in Frostborn Castle's great hall. Freya stood before them in a gown of silver and midnight blue. The dress had been Vivian's idea, commissioned from the finest seamstresses in the kingdom. It made Freya uncomfortable. She was used to forged clothes, not silk and embroidery. But this was necessary. This was proof. Aldwin stood beside her on the dais, wearing the crown that marked him Alpha King. His silver eyes found hers, and through the mate bond, she felt his steady confidence. "We gather today," his voice carried through the hall, "to witness the formal claiming and coronation of my mate, Freya Frostborn, last of the Songsmith line, Luna Queen of the Northern Territories." Murmurs rippled through the assembled wolves, some approving, others less so. Freya caught fragments of conversation. Omega. Unworthy. Too weak. The same judgments she'd heard her entire life. Aldwin's hand found hers. "Do you, Freya Whitfield, accept me as your mate, your alpha, your king?" "I do." "Do you swear to stand beside me, to help rule these lands with wisdom and strength?" "I swear it." His teeth found her neck again, reopening the mate mark, claiming her a second time before witnesses. The bond flared between them, complete and unbreakable. When he pulled back, blood stained his lips. "She is mine," Aldwin declared. "Any who challenge her right, challenge me." Gideon stepped forward, carrying a second crown, smaller than Aldwin's, but no less magnificent. Silver worked into intricate patterns that resembled both wolf and flame. Aldwin placed it on Freya's head. The weight settled, and with it came the reality. She was no longer just a forge worker. She was Luna Queen. "All hail Queen Freya!" Gideon's voice rang out. The hall erupted in response. Not all enthusiastic, but enough. Enough to make it real. The celebration lasted deep into the night. But Freya only endured an hour before escaping to the battlements. The cold autumn air was a relief after the stifling hall. You looked ready to murder someone. Vivian joined her, 2 goblets of wine in hand. 3 someones, actually. Freya accepted the wine gratefully. "Did you hear what Lady Blackwater said? That an Omega Queen would weaken the bloodline. Lady Blackwater is an idiot who thinks breeding is the only measure of worth." Vivian leaned against the stone wall. "Ignore her. Easy for you to say. You're not the one they're all judging." "No, I'm just the one they pity." Vivian's voice went quiet. Poor Lady Vivian. Nearly forced into a blood bond with a traitor. Nearly used as a sacrifice. Such a victim. Freya studied her sister-in-law. Vivian had been through hell during her captivity. The bruises had faded, but Freya suspected the emotional scars remained fresh. "You're not a victim," Freya said firmly. "You survived. That takes strength, does it?" Vivian's laugh was bitter. "I froze when Corwin came for me. Didn't fight, didn't run, just let him take me. Because you were outnumbered and outmatched. That's not weakness. That's survival instinct." Vivian's eyes glistened with unshed tears. "Seraphina died protecting your mate. Protecting my brother. After everything she did, betraying him, running away with Corwin, she still threw herself between them. That's bravery. What I did was just existing." Freya set down her wine and gripped Vivian's shoulders. "Listen to me. You endured captivity. Refused to give Corwin what he wanted even under threat of death. And when we came for you, you helped us fight our way out. That is bravery. That is strength. Don't let anyone, including yourself, tell you different." Vivian broke then, tears streaming down her face. Freya pulled her close, letting her sister cry against her shoulder. They stood like that for long minutes, 2 women who'd survived monsters holding each other up. When Vivian finally pulled back, her expression was different, determined. "Aldwin wants me to be his chief advisor," she said. "Help reform the kingdom's laws. I told him I wasn't ready." "Are you ready now?" "No, but I will be." Vivian straightened. "And you're going to help me." Over the following weeks, Freya discovered that being Luna Queen meant far more than wearing a crown and looking regal. It meant long days listening to petitions, settling disputes, and navigating political waters she barely understood. But it also meant change. Her first official act was establishing a royal forge, not hidden in the woods, but built into the castle itself, a workshop where she could practice her craft openly. The second act was searching for other songsmiths. They found 5 over the next 2 months, hidden among regular smiths and craftsmen, suppressing their abilities out of fear. Freya offered them protection, training, and legitimacy. The oldest was a man named Bernard, who'd been masquerading as a simple blacksmith for 40 years. The youngest was a girl barely 16, who wept with relief when Freya explained she wasn't cursed. Together they began building something new, a songsmith guild under royal protection. Aldwin supported every decision, every change. He revoked his father's old laws, the ones that had categorized Omegas as lesser, declared that rank came from ability, not designation. Not everyone approved. Several alphas protested. A few even withdrew their loyalty. "Let them go," Aldwin said, when Freya worried about fracturing alliances. "I'd rather have a smaller kingdom built on fairness than a large one built on oppression." Tamsin thrived under the new order. As the first human granted noble title in living memory, she became a symbol of possibility. Her lands weren't vast, but she managed them well, turning a struggling farming village into prosperous territory. "Who knew I'd be good at this?" Tamsin laughed during one of their visits. "Me, a tavern worker, managing estates and taxes." "You were always good at managing things," Freya replied. "Just needed the chance to prove it." 6 months after her coronation, Freya woke feeling strange, nauseous, dizzy. When the castle healer examined her, The woman's smile told Freya everything. "You're with child, Your Majesty." About 2 months along, Freya's hand moved to her stomach instinctively. A child, growing inside her, hers and Aldwin's. She found him in the training yard, sparring with Gideon. The moment their eyes met, he knew. The mate bond carried her joy, her fear, her overwhelming emotion. Aldwin crossed the yard in seconds, pulling her close. "You're certain?" The healer confirmed it. His laugh was pure elation. He spun her around despite her protests, then set her down gently as if she'd become fragile porcelain. "I'm still the same person," Freya said, amused. "Still capable of everything I was yesterday. I know. But now I get to worry about 2 of you." His hand joined hers on her stomach. "Our child." The pregnancy progressed smoothly despite Freya's insistence on continuing her forge work. She modified her routine, working shorter hours and avoiding the heaviest pieces. But she refused to stop completely. "Women have been having babies while working for centuries," she told Vivienne when her sister-in-law expressed concern. "I'm not going to spend 9 months sitting idle." "Stubborn," Vivienne muttered, but there was fondness in her voice. The castle transformed around them. Where once it had been cold and militaristic, now it held warmth, laughter in the corridors, children playing in the courtyards. The changes were gradual, but unmistakable. One evening, 9 months after her coronation, Freya stood in the forge workshop, putting final touches on a set of training daggers. Aldwin watched from the doorway, content to observe her work. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked without looking up. "Choosing me? An Omega with a complicated bloodline and enemies who want her dead? Never." His answer was immediate. "You freed me from silver chains, from a kingdom built on fear, from a life I never wanted." He crossed to her, tilting her chin up. "You are the best choice I ever made." Freya kissed him, deep and thorough. When they broke apart, both were breathless. "Come to bed," Aldwin murmured. "The forge will be here tomorrow." "In a moment. I just need to—" She never finished the sentence. Water gushed down her legs. Aldwin's eyes widened. "Is that the baby?" Freya gripped his arm. "The baby's coming." Chapter 8. Legacy of Silver and Wolf. The seasons had turned swiftly, years layering themselves like pages in a book too full of change. What once felt fragile had settled into routine, into life, into a kingdom learning how to breathe again. The labor lasted through the night. Freya gripped Aldwin's hand hard enough to leave marks as another contraction tore through her. Vivienne wiped sweat from her forehead while the castle's head healer directed from the foot of the bed. "One more push, Your Majesty," the healer encouraged. "I can see the first crown." First. The word registered dimly through the pain. Twins. The healer had suspected twins for months, but hearing it confirmed now made everything more intense. Freya bore down with everything she had. The mate bond pulsed between her and Aldwin, his strength flowing into her when she needed it most. A baby's cry split the air. "A boy," Vivienne announced, tears streaming down her face. "You have a son." Aldwin's expression transformed with wonder as the healer placed the squirming infant on Freya's chest. Black hair, tiny but perfect. His eyes opened, revealing green depths that matched his mother's. "Hello, little one," Freya whispered, touching his impossibly small hand. His fingers wrapped around hers with surprising strength. "We're not done yet," the healer reminded them. "The second child is coming." 10 minutes later, a second cry joined the first. A girl, red-faced and furious at being born. She had Freya's auburn hair and Aldwin's striking silver eyes. 2 heirs, Aldwin breathed, holding both infants as Freya recovered. "We're blessed twice over." They named the boy Alaric. The girl became Astrid. Both nursed eagerly. Both showed signs of the bloodlines they carried. When Alaric grew fussy, metal objects near him rattled. When Astrid cried, the wolves in the kennels howled in response. "They'll be powerful," Vivienne observed during one of her visits. "Both of them. The kingdom will be in good hands." 3 years passed in what felt like a heartbeat. Alaric grew tall for his age, serious and thoughtful. Astrid was smaller but fierce, with her father's determination and her mother's stubborn refusal to accept limitations. Freya watched them now from the Royal Forge workshop. Alaric sat cross-legged before a collection of nails, his small face scrunched in concentration. One nail lifted an inch off the ground before clattering down. "Good," Freya praised. "But remember, don't force it. The metal wants to move, you just guide it." Astrid practiced shifting in the courtyard under Aldwin's supervision. Her transformations were still partial, flickering between human and wolf. But she was learning. Both children were learning. The kingdom had transformed as much as the royal family. The Songsmith Academy now housed 23 students of varying ages and abilities. What had once been a forbidden art was now celebrated, protected, taught. But not all territories had accepted the changes peacefully. The Ironwood Pack, still bitter over Corwin's defeat and Osric's exile, had refused to swear loyalty. For 3 years they'd maintained hostile borders, raiding occasionally but never committing to full war. Until today. Alpha Brennan of Ironwood had sent a formal challenge. Single combat between alphas. Winner took control of both territories. "You don't have to accept," Gideon argued as Aldwin prepared. "We can end this with a full assault." "And lose how many warriors?" Aldwin checked his armor. "No. If Brennan wants to settle this the old way, I'll oblige him." Freya helped fasten the last straps. "The armor I forged will hold against anything he brings, but promise me you'll come back." "Always." He kissed her deeply. "I have too much to live for to throw it away on an honor duel." The combat took place at the border, witnessed by members of both packs. Brennan was older than Aldwin by a decade, scarred and experienced. But Aldwin had fought traitors and survived silver poisoning. He'd been forged in fires hotter than simple pack disputes. The fight was brutal. Both alphas shifted between human and wolf form, using every advantage. Aldwin's armor, inscribed with protective runes, turned aside killing blows. Brennan's experience kept him alive longer than most expected. But eventually, Aldwin had him pinned. One clawed hand at Brennan's throat. "Yield," Aldwin commanded. Brennan's eyes blazed defiance. Then, slowly, understanding. "You could kill me. You have the right." "I could. But I'm trying to build a kingdom worth inheriting. One where strength doesn't always mean death." Aldwin released him and offered his hand. "Yield. Join us. Help build something better than endless territorial wars." Brennan stared at the offered hand. Then, to everyone's shock, he took it. "I yield." Ironwood Pack swears to Frostborn. The unified kingdom celebrated for 3 days. For the first time in living memory, all the northern territories answered to one Alpha King. Peace, hard-won and precious, settled over the land. Vivian found her mate during the celebrations. A visiting Alpha from an eastern territory, diplomatic and kind. Freya watched her sister-in-law dance, finally free from the shadows of her captivity. "She's happy," Aldwin observed, joining Freya on the balcony. "She deserves it. After everything Corwin put her through." Below them, the courtyard filled with celebrating wolves. Humans danced alongside shifters. Songsmith apprentices demonstrated their skills to impressed onlookers. The changes they'd fought for had taken root. Alaric and Astrid ran through the crowd, chasing each other in a game only they understood. Small metal wolves that Freya had forged followed Alaric, animated by his developing power. Astrid shifted mid-run, her wolf form still clumsy but growing stronger. "They're so young," Freya said. "Too young to understand what their birth represents. They'll learn." Aldwin pulled her close. "Just as we did. Just as everyone here had to learn that the old ways weren't working." A servant brought them wine. They toasted silently, watching their children play, watching their kingdom thrive. "Do you remember?" Freya said quietly, "when you were chained in the forest? When I was just a frightened Omega who didn't know what she was? I remember thinking I was dying. And then you appeared." Aldwin's fingers traced the mate mark on her neck. "You freed more than just a wolf that night, Freya. You freed me from the chains my father's legacy had wrapped around this kingdom, around my soul. You did the same for me, showed me I was worth more than what others believed." She met his silver gaze, taught me that strength comes in many forms. The celebration continued into the night. When Alaric and Astrid finally tired, Aldwin carried them both to bed. Freya followed, tucking blankets around her sleeping children. Will they face the same struggles? She wondered. The same judgments? Probably. Aldwin brushed hair from Astrid's forehead. But they'll have what we didn't. A kingdom that values them for who they are. Parents who understand the weight of being different. And each other. They returned to the balcony one final time. The kingdom spread before them, peaceful under moonlight. In the courtyard below, the new banner flew. A black wolf and silver hammer intertwined. Symbol of everything they'd built together. No regrets? Aldwin asked. Freya thought of the forge worker she'd been. Thought of silver chains and desperate choices. Thought of pain and growth, and love found in impossible places. None. She laced her fingers through his. You told me once that I freed you from chains. But you freed me too. From the chains of believing I was worthless. From thinking my worth was measured by what others decided. We freed each other. Yes, she smiled. And now we get to watch our children grow up free. In a kingdom where no one is chained by fear, or prejudice, or old hatreds. Aldwin pulled her into his arms. You know what the greatest weapon against tyranny is? What? Hope. The belief that tomorrow can be better than yesterday. His lips found hers. You gave me that. Gave all of us that. Far below, Alaric's metal wolves prowled the empty courtyard, animated by dreams. Astrid shifted in her sleep, small growls escaping. The next generation, already powerful, already unique, already free. Freya rested her head against Aldwin's chest, listening to his steady heartbeat. 3 years ago, she'd been alone in a forge, believing herself broken. Now she stood beside her mate, mother to powerful children, queen of a transformed kingdom. The chains were never made of silver, she said softly. No, they were made of fear, of believing we had to be what others expected, of accepting limitations others placed on us. She looked up at him, but we broke those chains, and no one will ever forge them again. Aldwin's arms tightened around her. Never again. The moon rose higher, full and bright. Somewhere in the distance, wolves howled. Not in pain or challenge, but in celebration. In unity. The kingdom of Silver and Wolf had been forged in fire and blood in desperate love. But it would endure. Because the greatest chains had been broken. And freedom, once tasted, could never be forgotten.